And just a couple of words before I start. First of all, to welcome you all here today. And I think it's really good that the university give local people an opportunity to come in here and listen to lectures and find out more. I think the more that we can see of that, the better. I'm looking at the front row here. And also to congratulate the Parliamentary Outreach Service. The Parliamentary Education Service generally do a really good job, and you know, they're a fabulous resource. I think particularly in this day and age when there's quite a lot of cynicism about politics and politicians, the more that people can understand how it all works, not actually just in Parliament, but also on a local level, the better. I've done something that I don't think I've ever done since I got elected in 2005, and that is I've actually written a speech. But so knowing that the Parliamentary Outreach Service were going to film it, and it will be there as a resource, and you don't often get many people talking about the Whip's office, I thought it needs to be reasonably coherent and run fairly smoothly. I was also slightly anxious that I didn't give away more than I meant to give away, so I thought I'd write it down. I am a bit hoarse, so apologies for that, but I hope that people at the back nod your head if you can hear me. Yes, saw a thumb up. So, the Whip's office. The Whips, the victims of much rumour, myth and speculation, but about whom still little is known. Shadowy figures who skulk around Westminster, moving in mysterious ways and bound by shared secrets, few of which have ever been revealed. Past and present Whips will have conversation on what is known as Whip's terms, a firm promise of a secret to be shared and a secret to be kept. However, not all have kept their secrets as secret as they should. Giles Brandreth, who was MP for Chester from 1992 to 1997 and government whip for 2 years, was said to have broken the code of the Whips and outraged many when he published his diaries. Giles Brandreth probably rightly described the Whips as an office of curious customs and practices. But did he reveal all? A few tidbits to whet the appetites of those reading the fly cover only. And tonight I may disappoint. The advert that was sent out ahead of this evening's meeting made mention of the mysterious world of intrigue to draw you in, with a tantalising suggestion that all is to be revealed. I can tell you much, but I'm not intending to make Daily Mail headlines tomorrow. So a few secrets revealed, but importantly, I do hope to be able to give you some insight into the times, trials, tribulations and work of the modern-day Whip's office. However, I should hesitate and say I use the term modern rather loosely. The Houses of Parliament are slow to change their ways, and modern can refer to anything in the last 50 years. To illustrate this point, you only need to look back to the 1850s, when it was said of the Whips, they are ready to perform any trick or dodge for the benefit of their party. Some journalists could have written that yesterday. But it may have given rise to the comment from around the same time from Robert Peel, who said that the post of a whip was a place which requires a gentleman to fill it and which no gentleman would take. However, closer to the truth today, former Chief Whip Tim Renton, in his book, said, "A good whip is not just a sergeant major. He or she is also a counsellor and a nanny. The Whips listen everywhere, in the tea room, in the library, and watch who is talking to whom. And they also keep a watch on who the journalists are talking to." This forward-thinking former Chief Whip of nearly a quarter of a century ago gives away his modernity by referring to he or she. The mere thought that a woman could be a whip was an extraordinary suggestion until 1964, when Harriet Slater, a Labour MP, was the first woman appointed to the government whip's office. Actually, they probably still thought it was pretty extraordinary in 1964. The whip's office is traditionally the place for ex-union heavies or ex-military types. The whip's offices are never in any rush to change. But before moving along, a word about the terminology. The Whips are members of Parliament appointed by the party leader, the Prime Minister if that party is in government, as distinct from the Whip, which is a document circulated weekly by the whips of each party to their own members and lists the business for the following week together with when votes are expected. The importance of an item of parliamentary business used to be reflected by how many times it was underlined, hence the phrase three-line whip. In recent times, a three-line whip is always seen as an unbreakable commitment, with a two-line whip and a one-line whip being seen as of less importance. However, the days of literally underlining the forthcoming parliamentary business is gone, as we rely so much less on paper communication. But indeed only just. When I was first elected in 2005, it was still in use, disappearing with the increased use of email and text. But the phraseology has remained. I understand from the history books that at one time there could be as many as 6 lines of underlining. One wonders what the 6, 5 and 4-line whips all meant. However, MPs' lives in times gone past were complex. Being an MP was very much a part-time job, and MPs were not paid until the early 20th century. So gathering MPs to Parliament was probably a more complex affair, requiring more detailed instructions about the importance of business. I did find a reference to what is thought to be the first record of a written whip. It wasn't referred to as such, but it was a call to Parliament. On the 25th of November 1621, Sir George Calvert, who was the Member of Parliament and one of James I's Secretaries of State, wrote to Sir Julius Caesar, and yes, there really was an MP by that name representing Reigate amongst several other places. Sir George requested Caesar's attendance in Parliament on the following day and said, every day, as long as the House sits, to lay the King's necessities before Parliament. Which is much the same as we'd say today. On Monday the 9th of March there will be a 3-line whip from 3:30 till all government business is secured. So 400 years hasn't changed much, albeit with the message written and delivered by a very different means. It is quite difficult to put the whip's office in any historical context without looking at the changes in how legislation was taken through Parliament, the reduced influence of the monarch and the rise of the stronger party political affiliations that we have today. The parliamentary world in which the leaders of the last few centuries was very different from now, and so also the job of the whips. It is also the case that on looking through some of the historical accounts, there are some conflicting anecdotes. But what becomes clear is that whips and whipping appears to have merged without anyone really noticing. And in a rather shadowy way, one would expect everything to do with the whips to be. The expression whip has its origins in hunting terminology. The term whipper-in is the huntsman's assistant who keeps the hounds from straying by driving them back with a whip into the main body of the pack. It is said that every hunt has to have a whipper-in whose job it is to ensure the hounds do not stray. I don't think MPs would like to be referred to as hounds, but I think one gets the picture. Indeed, according to some historical records, the first term of whipper-in a parliamentary sense occurred in 1772, and I quote, "He was the first a whipper-in to the Premier." However, one can find various references to the whips before them. Whips and whipping goes back a long way. In a debate of the 8th of May 1769, Edmund Burke talked of calling his friends back and said he was whipping them in, to which there could be no better phrase. And if we go back even further to the 18th of November 1742, one of the Finch family, earls of various places like Nottingham, Winchelsea and Aylesford, remarked in a letter to Lord Milton that the Whigs for once in their lives have whipped in better than the Tories. So the term, the practice of getting people into Parliament for votes and persuading them to vote in a certain way, goes back many hundreds of years. And it's not really that surprising. Anyone who is leading a cause, parliamentary or otherwise, will always need to whip their followers to be effective as a group. The title Chief Whip cannot be dated exactly and appears to be formalised in the early 19th century. All political parties will have an effective Chief Whip, but the term usually refers to the Chief Whip of the government of the day. The Chief Whip administers the whipping system, including the supervision of the whips below them. The Chief Whip is also formally known as the Parliamentary Secretary to the Treasury, although the title is rarely used these days. The Chief Whip attends Cabinet and until quite recently was always a member of the Cabinet. The Chief Whip also used to hold the unofficial title of Patronage Secretary or Secretary for Political Jobs. But this is only used now with a mixture of irony and humour. There isn't so much patronage to be handed out. Recent changes in Parliament have reduced further the opportunities for patronage. And many decisions that were previously in the hands of the Chief Whip are now decided by Parliament as a whole, e.g. membership of the select committees. A few remain, and a few key decisions are taken in the Whip's office still, including, interestingly, what office accommodation is given to MPs of their party. And critically, for the ambitious MP, the Chief Whip and indeed the Whips collectively are still key to the success, or not, of an MP's parliamentary career. The Whip's recommendations to the leader of the party or to the Prime Minister hold considerable weight. The Whips are friends worth making and friends worth keeping. However, back to the first known holders of the title Parliamentary Secretary to the Treasury, they were literally just that. In the 16th century, they were no more than personal servants to the Treasurer, acting as his scribe and confidential secretary. However, by the Restoration, the Parliamentary Secretary became an important administrative role, carrying out some of the functions that were considered essential to the business of the Treasurer. And the secretaries would often be named as tellers, those that stand at the doors of the division lobbies and count the MPs who come through. The tellers were therefore in prime position to know who was a friend and who was a foe of the government of the day, and indeed still are. The position of teller was a powerful job and highly political. The tellers, these secretaries, had important information about who had received favours from the government. Patronage was in ample supply. MPs received pensions, contracts, assistance in elections for themselves and for their friends. So when it came to whipping in the votes, the secretaries knew who was in the government's debt, who owed the government, and they also knew who had not repaid the government with their support in the voting lobbies. So the parliamentary secretaries were closely connected with the Prime Minister and indeed with the administrative work of the Treasury Office. The secretaries therefore were skilled in financial matters, became skilled in the technique of parliamentary procedure, and they often served on committees appointed to bring in bills. They knew a lot, had their fingers in many pies, and were therefore a powerful bunch. But that's not it. Let's return to the Chief Whip, the Parliamentary Secretary to the Treasury, the Patronage Secretary. In days gone by, he also had hard cash to dole out, and he administered the Secret Service Fund, which was technically King's money. So in the 18th century, the Patronage Secretary was described, not unsurprisingly, by someone as a rather roguish office. By the beginning of the 20th century, the office of Chief Whip was well established, and though some of that patronage had disappeared over the course of the previous century, the arrangement of government business in the House, the organisation of MPs' attendance in Parliament, making sure important divisions were won, gathering intelligence on MPs, dishing out jobs and other political offices, all lay in the hands of the Chief Whip. By the early 20th century, we see the work of the Whips increasingly commented on. There are some very amusing quotes, and again, you could easily be forgiven for thinking some of them were only written yesterday. One particular one struck me. There is also a growing tendency for members to grow restive about the activities of the party whips. Still the case, I suspect. And MPs became increasingly aware of the extent to which their own domestic comfort depended on the whips. Don't forget, it was the whips who arranged the timetable of the House, gave members permission to go home or on holiday, and arranged the order of speakers in debate. By 1910, they had come to be known as some of the best parliamentary figures, Critics of Parliament were prone to suggest that the whips exercised a sort of tyranny over MPs and that they had destroyed the independence of the Commons. Outrageous suggestion, but nothing much has changed there. But let's move on to today and where we are now. The primary role of the Chief Whip and the whips is to get the government's business through Parliament, in particular to make sure the government gets a majority on the votes on its legislation. So that means, as it always has done, keeping MPs informed of forthcoming parliamentary business, making sure MPs attend important debates and support their party in any votes. The whips make sure that there are enough speakers in a debate, that the key debating points are made, and as Abel mentioned in the 50s, have the job of cheering the minister. For regular watchers of Parliament, the cries of "hear, hear" are often instigated by the whip on the bench. And there is always a whip sitting on the front bench, noting down who speaks well, who has performed badly, if any points of order are raised that have implications for a minister. And always keeping an eye on the business to make sure that everyone is in their place when they should be. Although much of the parliamentary business is limited by time constraints, it doesn't necessarily mean all the time will be used. So items of parliamentary business can begin earlier than anticipated. If you are watching Parliament on television and see a whip frantically running around, it's probably a whip desperately trying to locate the minister who didn't realise the next item of business started early and they need to be at the dispatch box. For the poor whip, as they are ministers, if no departmental minister is present and no departmental minister has turned up, then it's the whip who has to stand in for them, give a speech made up on the spot and with no briefing. Whips also have a Whitehall department or two to work with, and they will also be responsible for managing any bills that department brings forward. They will also have a flock of about 25 MPs who they look after, and they also other administrative responsibilities that are divided between them. For instance, one whip will be in charge of liaising with the clerks of the House each day about how the votes and the business are managed. And I mentioned the accommodation whip already, which is another. Parliament sometimes feels like a stage, with the whips as stage managers. The whips turn the lights on at the beginning of the day, make sure it all runs smoothly, and then put the cat out and turn the lights off at the end of the day. Through the Chief Whip, along with the business managers, the Leader of the House, the Prime Minister, and with some collaboration of the Whitehall departments, the business of the House is arranged. No small feat when one considers the administrative arrangements for a bill. It all starts with publication of a bill or a draft bill, then possible pre-legislative scrutiny, then a day for the second reading must be found on the floor of the House. Then committee stages need to be timetabled for several weeks at a time. Then a day or two for the report stage of the bill, again on the floor of the House along with a third reading. Then off it goes down to what we call the other end, so the Lords if the bill started in the Common, and then the whole process is repeated at the other end. Then back the bill comes to where it started for consideration of Lords amendments on the floor of the House. Then finally ping pong, where the bill can be batted to and fro from one end till agreement is found. And there may be several bills on the go at the same time. Confused, you wouldn't be alone. And that's just one of the jobs the Chief Whip will need to organise. The Chief Whip is in charge of mapping out the detailed timing for the government's programme of business and estimating the likely time needed through the usual channels. A word about that curious phrase in a minute. But also mindful of the other constraints on time due to standing orders and statute law, which require business to be completed by certain dates. But whipping is also a job of management and persuasion. The story about the techniques used by the whips to persuade backbenchers are often exaggerated. But as traditionally whips never speak about their work, with regard to the truth of the stories you may heard, in the words of Francis Urquhart, I couldn't possibly comment. The vow of silence on entering the whip's office is unbreakable. However, these days there is certainly an important element of carrot as well as stick in the way whips persuade members to do the right thing and support their party. Whips need today to be good personnel managers. It's not just about telling people what to do, it's about passing messages up to those making decisions, explaining why some MPs might have a problem with policy or with legislation, and passing messages back down. It's about making sure very overworked ministers also take the time to meet backbenchers and explain the issues. It's a job that needs sensitive handling to find compromise. Therefore, the Chief Whip has an important role advising the Cabinet and the PM about the likely acceptability of its legislative proposals to the backbenchers. A less well-known sign of the Whips is to provide a link between the government and opposition parties and other important figures within Parliament. These relationships are the ones that are referred to as the usual channels. The usual channels are a largely informal and private network of communication that the Whip's offices operate. Through the usual channels, unbreakable gentlemen's agreements are made to organise the timetabling of committees, the distribution between parties of select committee chairs, when votes occur, and a whole host of other issues. And in particular, pairing to make sure that some leeway is given to MPs who cannot be there for votes due to illness, family circumstances, or cross-party trips away from Westminster. The surprising thing about the Whip's office is that you work closer with the opposition parties than in almost any other role. There is also support from civil servants who work to help these usual channels run smoothly, acting as non-partisan deal brokers between the government and opposition parties. A notable feature of the post of Private Secretary to the Chief Whip is the length of service of the previous office holders. Since the creation of the post in 1919, there have only been 4 private secretaries, so it must be a fun job. How many of us are there? There is a Chief Whip, the Deputy Chief Whip, and then 3 of the government whips are officially members of Her Majesty's household. The Deputy Chief Whip is the Treasurer of the household, then there is the Comptroller of the household, and then there's the Vice Chamberlain of the household, that's me. The Whips, who are members of the royal household, accompany the sovereign and royal household at various diplomatic and social events. The next layer down in the government Whip's office are the Lord Commissioners of the Treasury. They get to sign off certain documents and sometimes even cheques by virtue of their office. And then there is a team of junior Whips. Whips, even though they are non-departmental ministers, are silent on everything. They are a policy-free zone, certainly publicly, and they don't speak or sign anything. But for those reasons, they get priority access to ministers about constituency matters. And then finally, a word about my role. I'm the Whip who holds the title of Vice Chamberlain to Her Majesty's household. I'm one of those 3 Whips who are members of the royal household. The role of Vice Chamberlain dates back to the reign of Edward III, and there are only 5 women to have ever held the post. I'm given a white staff as a wand of office by Her Majesty the Queen, and together with the 2 members of the royal household, we walk down the Queen's Passage at garden parties with our white staves, and along with the royal equerries, find suitable guests for the Lord Chamberlain to introduce to the Queen. In a tradition which has its origins in the 17th century, before the Queen's speech at the state opening of Parliament, all 3 of us travel to Buckingham Palace carrying our ceremonial white staves. However, the Vice-Chamberlain doesn't return straight away. The Vice-Chamberlain is kept prisoner, kept hostage during the state opening and has to remain at Buckingham Palace for the Queen's safe return. It was said that should a group of militant anti-monarchists manage to abseil down from the public galleries during the Queen's speech and snatch Her Majesty from under their lordship noses, the hapless Vice-Chamberlain would find himself or herself indefinitely detained in the palace. Well, there could be worse places to be detained. The Vice-Chamberlain writes to Her Majesty every day, and the letter is printed out and put in her red box every night. The purpose is to inform Her Majesty about what has happened in the House that day, although it is well known that she enjoys something reasonably light-hearted and a few snippets of tea-room gossip as well. The Vice-Chamberlain also presents herself to the House of Commons to report the Queen's answers to addresses from the House. For me, this role deserved a pair of high-heeled shoes, something I never wear. When I was appointed, I decided that it had to be high heels. The boys wear morning dress, so for me, walking backwards in high-heeled shoes brought a new challenge to my life as MP. And there we have it, a quick look at whips and whipping. Do you know more than when I began? I hope so. Do you know things about the things you really wanted to know? I hope not. Because if you did, I would have betrayed some secrets. But I hope I have shared an insight into some of the work of the Whip's office in what is one of the greatest democratic institutions in the world. In the House of Commons on the 11th of November 1947, Churchill said those famous words, "Democracy is the worst form of government, except for all those other forms that have been tried from time to time," and I have to agree. It is by no means perfect, but with the elections coming up and a short time ahead, we should remember to value what we have. Nurture it, improve it, but value it. And remember how lucky we are. Around the world, every minute of every day, someone will be putting their life at risk to fight for the right to vote. We have that right, and we should use that right whenever we are given the opportunity. If you or someone you know is thinking about not voting on May the 7th, I would ask you to ask them to give a thought for that which they discard so easily, when others would literally die for the right and the privilege to do so. Thank you very much.